Welcome to Alternative Dog Moms Podcast. I'm Kimberly Gauthier, the creator of Keep the Tail Wagging. For the past 9 years, I've been blogging about raw feeding, pet wellness, and life as a crazy dog mom. I've seen massive improvements in my dog's health since I started raising my dogs naturally, and I'm passionate about sharing my experience to help other pet parents.
I'm Erin Scott. For the past 9 years, I've been researching and learning everything I can about healing cancer, allergies, autoimmune, and mystery illnesses in both my dogs and myself. And I can't wait to share with you everything I've learned on this journey. As the Alternative Dog Moms, we're bringing you all the latest dog health news that we're following and sharing the tips, tricks, and resources we learn along the way. Now, let's get started.
Are we recording? Hi, Erin.
Hello, Kimberly.
Hello. So we're talking about Apoquel. And I'm actually really excited to talk about it because this is the time of the year. It's allergy season. I mean, it's for me. It's for my dogs. I only have one dog that has really severe allergies. And you have pit bulls. So do your dogs have allergies?
Penny does. She doesn't have spring allergies. It actually always seems to flare up in the winter, oddly enough.
Oh, yeah.
We have struggled with allergies off and on, but not seasonally, I don't think.
Yeah. Rodrigo is the one that he has both, he has environmental allergies. So it flares up in the spring with the grass growing and then the rain, because wet grass really irritates his paws. And then again in the fall, same thing, because the sun is not as hot anymore. The grass is starting to grow back again, and we're getting more rain. And so that's when I usually see it, is those 2 times of year. So, I mean, because I always thought pit bulls, that was one of the reasons, one of the only reasons why we don't have one is because I would hear these horror stories of just like, I'm trying everything. My dog is so sick. And then people would just say, well, it's a pit bull. And for a while, I was like, I wasn't aware that was a thing. But it's just something that I've always been concerned about is, just having to deal with these really severe allergies.
I have definitely seen it in pit bulls. It is extremely common. But I've definitely seen that. We were so fortunate with our 2 old girls. Neither of them ever had any kind of allergies. And I was like, man, we really dodged a bullet with that one. Because I would see it in all my friends and everybody who's adopting. And it's extremely common in pit bulls for sure.
So I have a friend. She's actually my co-host of my other podcast, Girls with Dogs.
Kathy.
And she has groovy golden doodles. She has golden doodles. Her blog is called Groovy Golden Doodles, but I've always just said, like, groovy golden doodles is a breed in my mind. But one of her dogs does have allergies, and she does give him Apoquel. And she takes a lot of crap for it on social media. And I shouldn't say a lot, but she doesn't often talk about it simply because she has to deal with everyone telling her how horrible it is and how you shouldn't do that with your dog. And it's one of those where I don't disagree, but I think that there are cases when dogs have such severe allergies. And if it is environmental, and as it is with her dog, the only real solution is to move. Because she's done everything she's improved his diet, she's worked on his gut health and his immune system. She's done everything to try to help his system beat the allergies, except for move to a different state. And so her dog does take Apoquel. She actually pays attention to like the parasite seasons and the weather and all the seasons and what's growing, to keep on top of all of her dog's medications, because she's also in a heartworm state.
Right.
So that's something that she has to deal with as well. And so she doesn't give her dog Apoquel all day, every day, year round. It's just during the season when he's most affected. But I'm curious how many veterinarians, similar to steroids and antibiotics, are prescribing these things at the first hint of an allergy rather than working through all the steps to try and figure this out before, okay, so we tried everything, now let's go to this.
Right. Yeah, I think that is a thing, that it's so overprescribed and that people don't get all the information. And so the reason we're talking about it, right, is because the FDA just put out this new warning about it, basically verifying what people in like the alternative holistic health community have been saying for years that this can cause cancer in dogs. And it's, in a way, it's like validating to see. But at the same time, I also understand that there's a lot of pet parents who feel like this is their only option, or it's the only thing that's worked for them, and they don't want to see their dog suffer. And then, it's almost like a risk benefit analysis, which I think we're all doing all the time with our dogs anyway.
Yeah.
So I understand. And I guess I'm just so curious if having this additional information would change anybody's mind. Like, first of all, I don't even know that pet parents are getting this information from their veterinarian. If you get like the package insert or the box, which I don't even think all vet offices give, are you even going to read it? Are you even going to look at it? Is your vet even going to read it? Is your vet going to look at it? Is your vet going to counsel you on it? And so at the end of the day, while it's good to see because we know that it can be dangerous, like, I just don't know if it'll make a difference in the long run.
And whenever I see things like that, it sounds negative, but I think it's more realistic. I don't think it will make a difference because it really it's not enough to just post these things on social media in a community where everyone's kind of on the same page.
Yeah, like a preaching to the choir kind of
Exactly.
thing.
I mean, it's just sort of like, I can talk about raw feeding all day long, but if I'm not talking to the people who ultimately my message is meant for, then I'm not going to change anyone's mind. And when you take this message to the communities where you think they need to have this information, oftentimes you're met with so much pushback that it's not worth it. And I think sometimes we can come across as holier than thou, and a bit aggressive in our passion when we're sharing this information with people. So if someone posts that their dog, because like my heart breaks for Kathy, because whenever she mentions Apoquil on our podcast, it comes with a disclaimer, like this, like she, in a exhausted tone of, I've done my homework. My dog is, we do blood work, we do all these things, and this is the best thing that happens. Yes, I have tried everything, and it's just one of those where I think sometimes, we're taking our own experiences with the worst vet that we actually went to, and then putting that onto everyone else, assuming that they're having the exact same experience. And to your question about, are veterinarians giving people the warnings? When Scout got, what's it called? When he started chemo last year, I was sent home with so many bottles of medications, probably like 4 bottles. I think there was 2 tranquilizers. There was something for nausea. There was something for diarrhea. And I think there might have been there was a 5th one, but I can't remember what it was for. I think it was like also for either nausea or diarrhea as well. I can't remember though, but it was so much and I didn't need any of it, but we didn't have a discussion about be careful about this one but she did give me discussions when we were doing the chemo meds, because there's certain medications that do have, I think they probably all potentially can have side effects, but there's like one medication that can cause nausea, and it didn't in Scout, so it's no worries. There's another one that can cause like urinary tract infections, so it's like keep plenty of water on hand, let him, whenever he has to go outside, let him go outside so he can pee this stuff out of his system. And so those are the type of discussions we had, but never the FDA came out with a study that said, I've never had that discussion with any veterinarian, I don't think.
Yeah, that's really interesting. They even, tell you with people getting chemo that there's, certain things that you have to be careful of too. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to hear they tell you with dogs also.
Yeah. And she's so cool because she gives me it's about a 2-page document of notes after every appointment that goes over what we discussed. It doesn't go into detail about his blood work, but it just gives a blurb about, the blood work was fine, or, liver enzymes were elevated. I think one time I forgot what it is. I think it's the protein is elevated, but she'll put in there, but this, Scout is raw fed and, and those type of things. So this is expected. And it's really kind of cool just reading it because I like being able to go back when I forget and figure out, what do I need? Hi, Cosmo. What do I need to do?
No, that's really great because a lot of times all you end up leaving the vet office with is like a copy of how much you paid.
Exactly. A bag of pills and a copy of how much you paid. And it's just like, oh my God. I mean, and it's just, and the thing about it is that I know that our regular veterinarian and our oncologist, if I have questions, they're more than happy to answer my questions. And I also wonder, the fact that I don't have these discussions with them doesn't mean that they're not having them with other people. I tend to be that person who I show up to a vet appointment with a list of questions, notes. These are the sites that I was on. What do you think about this? And we're having this long, detailed conversation. So I think in their mind, they know that if I have questions, I'll ask, and that I'm going home to research. And so they're not too worried about me. But it's sort of like when I was a new pet parent, I didn't research anything. I mean, my vet said this was okay, so I figured it was okay.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of people end up finding. And then, they'll get some kind of blowback on social media, and then they're just very turned off. And, and
they get defensive. And then every single time they hear Apoquel, they just shut down.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I get it. I understand what you're saying. And it's unfortunate because my thing is, when I was first writing about raw feeding and going down this journey, I was very opinionated and thought I knew everything about everything. And so whenever I see people being passionate about these things, I'm reminded, good Lord, I cringe when I think about it. But I've learned to just ask questions and try to like formulate the questions in a way so it doesn't sound like I'm trying to like, well, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to act like I'm I'm asking questions, but I'm really telling you what to do. So to me, it's more of a understanding that tomorrow I can end up with a dog that has such severe allergies. Raw feeding is not a cure-all. It could be, I can get an adult dog or a senior dog that is so much damage has happened to their system that it's going to take a while, if I can, to adjust and reset that. So my biggest question is always with people is, what else are you doing? Mm-hmm. Because that's the other thing is, over time, like Kathy with her dog, she's been able to reduce the dosage. And I've heard this from other people because they improved their dog's diet, because they started focusing on gut health. They started making changes around the house, like things like air purifiers and just getting the dust up and whatever the case may be.
Like wiping them down when they come in from outside, to get any like pollen kind of stuff off. I mean, like my car is already starting to get that yellow tinge to it from all the pollen.
I'm glad I don't have to deal with that. I would, because when we first started, I talked about, because it's allergy season for me, and I've had hay fever since I was a kid. And I feel like, I'm sure that there was some type of medication back then, but this was the 70s. And so I don't know what was available. And I'm a little kid outside picking dandelions and making a big dandelion bouquet. And by the time I get in the house to give my mom her bouquet of flowers, my eyes are swollen shut. And I have a couple of school pictures where either my eyes were swollen shut or I looked like I was barely awake because I was on allergy medicine.
Oh my gosh.
Because what I do remember about allergy medicine was that the only thing that was really available was Benadryl, and which is great for nighttime. But for me, at least, when I'm in the thick of allergy season, because I have to start taking allergy meds before the real symptoms kick in, or else I'm toast. But it's gotten so much better as I've gotten older, but it used to be so bad. But yeah, I can't take Benadryl during the day because, it was just so miserable. I was so miserable. And to be honest, there were nights I couldn't sleep at night because I couldn't breathe. I would try so many things and nothing worked. I used to hate when people would give me recommendations, because it's just sort of like, I've tried that, because well, have you tried this? One time it's like I was getting so angry with someone because they were giving me recommendations, but I was trying to be nice, and Johan finally just stepped in and said, she doesn't like it, when people do that, because trust me, she has tried everything. She does not need your advice. You are not her doctor. And the person was like, and he was like, you really need to stop it. I was just like, thank you. Because I was just like, please stop it. I know. And I get it. People are just trying to help, but it's just like so aggravating. And back then, I would have tried anything to just be able to breathe. And because you're not sick, so to take, take time off. I mean, I would take maybe a day here and there, but I couldn't really be sick from work. And if I were, I would just be sick for like months. It would just be basically because my allergies lasted from March through like midsummer. And so it's like there's a big block of time where
you can't just take off.
Yeah. And so like if there was like a human version of Apoquel and it totally worked, I wouldn't have cared about the side effects. I would have been like, I'm sure I'll be fine. This is only a certain amount of dogs. Maybe there's something else I can do to offset this just so I could have some relief. So I try to keep that in mind when talking to people when they're giving their dogs these various drugs, because I don't know what their situation is.
Right. Yeah. So I actually suffered and still kind of do with allergies. Seasonal allergies. So here's a funny story, and I'm not saying this will work for you or for anybody else, but it's what worked with me, surprisingly, like sort of accidentally. About 5 years ago, I started working with a functional medicine doctor, and she wanted to test me like for food allergies. And I came back, the only thing that I had an allergy to is wheat. It's not even like the gluten protein itself. It's wheat. And it was like the highest like red category. So she's like, you really need to go gluten-free and see how you do. And I'm like, oh my God, like I couldn't even imagine that, but I did it. So for like 2 years, I was like 100% like gluten-free. Totally cleared up all the sinus problems I've had since I was 13. And like, I hardly get any allergies anymore.
Yeah. And I've heard that story so many times. It's amazing.
And I know it's not for everybody, but like I didn't even expect that. And so now I'm at the point where like, if we go out to dinner and there's like some really good looking bread, like I can have some bread and not like throw myself into like, an allergy or something. So I'm not like quite as like militant about it anymore as I once was. And then with the dogs, and again, I don't necessarily think that Penny's allergies are specifically environmental, but I go to like you said, the gut health and the microbiome. With her, we did the microbiome transplants, and that's what's cured like all her allergy issues.
Did you do that through Animal Biome?
So we did the test through Animal Biome, and what ended up happening, I think this stuff is kind of fun, right? So the first time I ever heard about Animal Biome, I thought, hey, this is fun. I'm going to go get a poop sample and like mail it across the country. And so I got this report back and I kind of didn't know what to do with it, but this was probably like the beginning of 2019. But like they both came back like not too bad, based on my like understanding of it. So then over like a year later is when Penny had these horrible like health crisis where like her feet got like so red, and I mean she couldn't even hardly walk because her feet were swollen and itchy, and she was biting at them all the time. And then it started coming up her legs, and she had like draining tracts down her legs, and and it was horrible. And what I ended up doing is I wrote out kind of like a health history for her because I was getting ready to work with a new vet, and I realized she had had 4 courses of antibiotics in 1 year's time.
Oh, yeah.
And so I actually had, because she had a couple UTIs and then she had this foot thing, and they kept giving antibiotics for it. So I had the before Animal Biome test before she had these 4 courses of antibiotics. And then we went and did, when I started with this new vet, and a new test. And it was so shockingly bad, like her gut health, even though she's raw fed and she's getting the goat milk and the kefir and the, fish stock. And we're doing all the things that we thought we were supposed to do. The antibiotics had just wrecked her gut health like horribly in like 1 year period of time. So our vet was like, I want to do the fecal transplant because doing the animal biome wouldn't like move the needle enough at one time. So we ended up doing like 2 like fecal transplants where my vet uses her own dog as a donor dog because she like tests her biome like every couple months. And that's actually what ended up clearing up like all of her problems. And then we actually use animal biome capsules kind of like as a maintenance thing, kind of like twice a week or something. She'll get them. And it's pretty much, worked to, she had one little flare up this winter, but we had, it was like Christmas time and we had like cut back on like some of the extra supplements and things because it was like the holidays. And that's when everything kind of started to flare up again. And then we started it back up. She got some ozone treatments and it went back under control. Nice. So like the one time I tried to stop, like.
Okay. So now I have questions with the poop transplant. Was it given in pills?
No. It's really kind of gross, but I'll tell you.
Yes, please.
So she basically like picks up her dog's poop in the yard and then kind of puts it in like a blender. And she uses like some of the ozonated saline with it to like mix it up. And she used the term a slurry. And then it's administered like kind of like an enema. It's like a poop enema.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And then so you did that twice. How long before you started seeing improvements?
Pretty quickly. Like we did it, like we noticed improvements after the first time. And then we did it. So like we did it once, we did it again, like a month later. And like, she really, like anything that had been kind of lingering cleared up after the second one. And then I think like maybe 6 months after that, we kind of just did it as like a maintenance kind of thing. So she's only had like 3 total over like a 2-year period of time now. Okay.
And then I was going to ask something else and I don't. Oh, you said ozone treatment. Is that something separate from the poop transplant?
So you can use it you can use the ozone with the poop or you can use the ozone by itself. So she's gotten it both ways.
Okay.
And the ozone she gets like every time she goes to the vet, like once a month or so, she'll get it. And it's kind of like, when they get like the fluids injected and they kind of get that camel hump.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's really interesting because there's so many really cool things happening in the like the fresh food or holistic world. And with Rodrigo, switching him to raw was the biggest change. So that helped a lot, but it didn't cure it. I mean, he was still licking his paws like crazy. And he still has periods of time where he's doing it again and I have to make adjustments. But for him, I've tried things like local raw honey. So he'll start getting that like just as a treat. I'll drizzle it in his dish, during the day. So he'll get a little bit of local raw honey. I've tried. Look at that. That is insane.
Yeah.
Okay. Erin's showing me her dog's paws and oh my God, that would just break my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I give him local raw honey. I've tried bee pollen, but oh no.
That was her foot, yeah.
That is so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing that a poop transplant cleared that up because I would see a picture like that and be like, you're going to have to just go and do the Apoquel because that's just terrible. And what's funny is that I should ask my vet if she authors this. I don't know if she does or not, but I'm curious to know how many veterinarians around the country do offer something like that. I know that, what is it? Adored Beast Apothecary has a supplement that's kind of like, I think it's fermented poop ultimately.
Oh, okay.
And I tried that with Rodrigo and I thought I saw improvements, but I don't know if it's just, timing or wishful thinking, but it didn't really, I like the phrase you used early, move the dial on him. But yeah, local raw honey has helped. Definitely feeding him raw helped. But the biggest is the focus on the gut health and making sure his gut is healthy. And so my dogs which is why, I was that crazy person running around the city buying all the fermented fish stock. Because my dogs get fermented fish stock as their, quote unquote lunch. Everyone, Rodrigo and Scout get a half a cup a day. Not every day, but most days. It's usually, if I don't have it thought out, then no one's getting it. But they get about a half a cup a day, or a little close to maybe even, it doesn't matter, a third of a cup a day. And then the other dogs get about a quarter cup a day. And so that is magical. And that if I keep that routine up, especially in the spring and the fall, Rodrigo is golden. And it's just, ultimately, it just comes down to, I think, trial and error until you find out what works for your dog. And that's, I think, the most frustrating part, because, you have this veterinarian telling you need to go in this direction. They're the expert. They should know. And then you have, your research and all of social media telling you to go in a completely different direction. And it's hard to know what's right for your dog. And because no one wants to put their dog at risk. So I get that.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody who's using things like Apoquel wants to harm their dog in any way. And like you said, like I was the recipient of well-intended advice that has left me with PTSD as in my early days as a dog mom. So yeah, I've always been like hypersensitive to how I communicate, with people about things like that. And it's like, I want people to know that there are other options out there, but like, yeah, I would never want to judge anybody for the decisions that they're making, you know, because they're really just trying, I don't think the owner and I don't think the vet are trying to give your dog cancer by telling them to stay on Apoquel.
Yeah.
I do start to question big pharma, but
yeah, exactly. And their motivations. And it's one of those things where sometimes, and I know that, like, I've heard, I should say, I haven't had this experience, but I've heard there are veterinarian clinic chains out there that basically have everybody on, in a revolving door. Like, you got 10 minutes, we're going to get you in, get you out. And so they are basically, okay, your dog has allergies, Apoquel. Okay, your dog has this, steroid. If your dog has, is vomiting, okay, or has an ear infection, here's some antibiotics. And no one is looking at anything beyond that. And I have an integrative vet, so she kind of balances everything. And I've learned, because that was another thing, is I'm curious to know how many people, specifically women, have a hard time speaking up at the vet.
Yes.
Because I always had a hard time. And I think it's, I blame it for my growing up without a father. I mean, I obviously have a father, but he wasn't a big part of my life. And, especially, during my formative years. And I'm curious to know how much of that, because especially if I'm dealing with a man in authority, it's so hard sometimes for me to speak up and say something, because when my father was in my life, I just wanted him to want to stay. And so I was a good girl with him. And so I fall back into that habit.
Yes.
And so, and I'm curious to know how many other women, for, a variety of reasons, will basically become a wallflower when they're talking to their veterinarian and won't speak out. And I finally had to learn to just not so much learn how to be bold enough to speak out, but find a way to speak up that was comfortable to me. And I did it by just creating a conversation. So when Scout, years ago, we woke up one day and Scout had a fever of 105. Which is, that's when you take your dog to the emergency vet. And so we did, I'm on the phone Googling it because he was acting weird. I took his temperature. It's like, oh crap, I'm Googling it. And Google came back and said, go to the vet. And so I called around to different vet emergency clinics to find if anyone can get us in. One got us in, and that became our emergency vet from that point on. They actually sent us over to VCA?
The chain.
Exactly. And this is before they were purchased by Mars. So I know that people are like, they've changed. I don't know. I haven't been. But when I went, the one that was in Linwood, Washington, they were fantastic. And we went over everything and they sat down. And I guess the original clinic let them know, or maybe in the paperwork, I'm a raw feeder and all of that. So they just seemed to be prepared for my questions. And so I was just like, okay, I'm happy to do whatever it is that's going to save my dog. However, I am worried about antibiotics because Rodrigo, similar to your dog, had been on multiple rounds of antibiotics. And I blame that for his subsequent gut health for the rest of his life. And I wish maybe I should look into doing a poop transplant. That would be crazy if after all this time it helped Rodrigo.
It's really amazing.
I mean, it's like, good Lord. I would want to do it for all the dogs. But anyway, so I just asked them, it's like, okay, so if we're going to go on antibiotics, I know what it does to the gut bacteria. I would like to give him a supplement to make sure that it's still there, but I don't want the antibiotics to kill that too. So what do I do? And we actually had a really great conversation about timing and basically the antibiotics in the morning, gut bacteria 12 hours, or gut bacteria, digestive supplements 12 hours later. And I did this every day while he was on the antibiotics, and then continue for 2 more weeks after the antibiotics, just to make sure. And he bounced back and he was fine. But it was just one of those where, I had to figure out how to speak up and ask those questions.
Yeah, that's definitely been something that's been like a learning lesson for me, especially over the last 10 years with the dogs and with myself. Mm-hmm. And I had both my mom and my dad, but they're both, especially my mom, people pleasers. And so I was just kind of raised to be like a people pleaser. And and also I think there's something generational with like not questioning authority and not, that's what the doctor said. They're the doctor. You're not the doctor. You do what the doctor says. And
yeah.
And so again, I feel like I was kind of raised that way. And so there was a period, a time where it's like, I don't know about this. And sometimes me speaking up for myself, especially in the earlier days, was I just say, okay, yes, sir. And then I'm just going to go do whatever I'm going to do, or I'm just going to find a new vet or a new doctor and just not go back to you anymore. And sometimes that's what I've had to do. But but with the dogs, with my stuff, like I've really had to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and saying, I'm going to do this, or sometimes it is just, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think we should, if your vet doesn't allow for questions or shuts you down or doesn't validate that you have a concern, I think that is time to look for a new vet or a new human doctor, if that's your human doctor.
It is true. I mean, because I had one of those vets, and what's interesting is, he was very old school. He would have the conversations with Johan, but never with me. And if Johan and I went to the vet together, he addressed Johan.
Oh, that would drive me crazy.
Even if he was answering my questions, he would address Johan. And so it was, and what's funny is that, he was a nice man, but he was just from a different time. Yeah. And so he was very hard to speak to. And I think it's funny. I actually curious to know if, I would never bother him because I don't think he would remember me or care. But I've always been tempted to, because he's the one that predicted that Rodrigo would die shortly after he turned 3. He was kind of just matter of fact about it. Like, yeah, it's just like, you got a dud here with a dog. and he was just sort of matter of fact about it. And he's the reason why we have Keep the Tail Wagging and why I feed raw and all of that, because I was just like, no, my dog is not dying at 3 years old. And now that he's 12, every year that, has gone past, I think once he hit probably like 7, every year I've been like, I should take him down to that. And they're like, how you like me now? Exactly. But I don't think he would appreciate it. And I don't think I would get the satisfaction that I imagined from it. But I kind of wonder if it would be so cool if I took my dog down there and he sat me down and was like, okay, well, what did you do? And we could have like a really cool conversation.
It'd never happen.
I know, it wouldn't. But it's like with Scouts Oncologist, I feel like we're getting there, because she went from, can you not feed raw while we're doing this, to do whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because obviously you know what you're doing. And I think that there's also a balance between, I'm not going to disregard everything that the vet says. I'm just going to, there are going to be certain things where, like, for instance, the diet, that is just non-negotiable. Right. I can't do that. And, but I will have to say that it's not like she told me to go and put him on kibble. She told me to cook for him. So, progress.
Right. Well, I think it's important to know your non-negotiables and to even come prepared in your mind, maybe with like excuses you can use, or, you know, like, because I have totally pulled the, oh, well, I need to check with my husband.
Yes.
Even though that is not the dynamic of our relationship.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
I have done that too. I have done that too.
Or even just, you know, oh, you know, I'll look into that, or I understand your concern, or, I've tried to, like, sometimes I have to, like, when I was dealing with this vet office that we don't go to anymore, you know, I would sometimes have to like prep myself in advance, you know, with like, what am I going to say when they say XYZ? And,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And have to kind of like psych myself up, you know.
Well, it's like, you know, the body language.
Mm-hmm.
Like when it comes to, especially when dealing with a new vet, I'm lucky because the only time I have to deal with a new vet is when Scout was diagnosed. And then if my vet's on vacation and she has a visiting vet. But now I've been going to her for so long that I know the visiting vet. And there's one, she's so awesome. And I walk into the room and she's like, oh my God, I remember you. And I'm like, I remember you too. And we've had such great conversations. But what's interesting is that, you know, you get well, what are you feeding them? And I'm like, well, I feed a raw diet. And you can feel the pause. And, you know, it's like now they're going to start tiptoeing around me to find a way to tell me that this is bad.
Right.
And then you got to be really careful about that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I know. And I just agree with them. You're absolutely right. This is what I'm doing. And every single time, I mean, and I know, like, knock on wood, I've been very, very fortunate. Every single veterinarian that I've spoken to about feeding raw has, once they became comfortable that I'm not just throwing a package of ground beef in the bowl and calling it raw, then they turn around and start giving me ideas and suggestions and asking questions. I interviewed Dr. Courtney. He's a veterinarian out of Southern California. He's like a celebrity veterinarian. And our interview turned into him interviewing me about raw feeding because he was hearing about it and he was starting to, other veterinarians were starting to recommend it. And so he wanted to, his clients were asking him about it. So he was just sort of like, you know, asking me questions. And it was so much fun just to talk to these people. And, oh, I lied. There were 2 veterinarians that they weren't treating my dog. I was speaking at Seattle Pet Expo years ago. And I was on a panel one day and a veterinarian was on the panel and she made quite the scene, letting folks know that she refused to be on a panel next to me while I'm talking about raw feeding and how wrong that was. And I thought it was odd. And then, you know, later the next day, there was another panel and her partner came because she refused to come back. And her partner made quite the scene about it. But what was I didn't get upset about it because I guess I'm so used to it. I'm sorry, Cosmo. I just knocked my cat scratched me and I pushed him away and he like fell weird. Oh, now he's tearing up paper. But anyway, I wasn't offended by it, but I was shocked by their opinion because they were wildlife veterinarians. So I thought out of all the veterinarians, they would be on my side with the species appropriate thing, but they were not. And I don't know what their situation was. And I would have loved to talk to them about it just to find out, like, how did you come to this conclusion? Like, because I feel like some of them is because of their education and what they know, but some of it is just they are treating dogs that have nutrient deficiencies because of these homemade diets or hearing about other veterinarians and doing this. And so they're just sort of like, you guys are not capable of doing this responsibly or accurately. So no.
Remember in like the 80s, how you would always hear at Halloween that there was like, you know, poison in the candies or nails in the candy. And then it's like, if you go back and try to look through the news, it's like, I don't think that ever happened. It's like one of those things that we always heard. And I sort of feel like that with veterinarians and like dogs being fed like a wrong raw diet. It's like they all know somebody, but they've never actually seen it, but they've like heard these stories.
Well, that's funny. What is it? Because it's like the Berenstain Bears. As the Mandela effect, where everyone remembers something. Like, because I think it's, I know someone's going to listen to this and be like, no, it's this. So I'm sorry if I'm getting it wrong, but it's like, there's the Berenstain Bears and then there's the Berenstain Bears. But it's
like spelling.
there's an extra syllable. And I remember the extra syllable. And a lot of people do. And they're like, no, it's always been like this. And it's like, no, it hasn't. And so everyone's like, it's the Mandela effect. We have, a glitch in the matrix, everything changed. And it's one of those things where it's just sort of like, are you sure? Or is everyone referring to this one veterinarian that, that is telling this story at every event that he goes to? But I know that when I interviewed, and we'll transition to this, when I interviewed Scott for National Raw Feeding Weeks, Scott of Raw Feeding 101, he told me when he went to Gregory Lucas's event several years ago, Dr. Karen Becker spoke about the importance of, hitting those nutritional markers in our dog's diet, specifically the puppies.
Yeah.
And went on to show videos and images of puppies that had to be put down because around a year, because their nutrition had just been so neglected the first year of their life that they were just too sick. And it's just sort of like, those are the type of things where, one, I'm glad that I didn't go because I hate videos and images kind of like thing, that. Yeah. But two, it really changed my mind about balance. I still hold the same opinions, but I understand better, like, for instance, the raw fed and nerdy group, where they're so passionate about balance. Because I've seen some of their members say things to people like, if you're not going to do it the right way, then you may as well just feed kibble, because at least your dog is getting, a quote unquote balanced diet through kibble. And I always thought that was such a ridiculous statement, but now I understand where they're coming from, or at least I think I do. I still think balance is easy. I was talking to someone today who was talking about she was so stressed out and overwhelmed because she's trying to balance her dog's diet. And I'm just sort of like, yeah, it's so easy. It's really not that big of a deal. But of course, I don't know if what I do will necessarily work for every other dog out there, but it works for my dogs. And I have 4. I used to have 5, and they all ate the same diet and they're all great. But it's just so completely overwhelming. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I get it. Especially with puppies, it is so important as they're growing. Yeah.
But that's what I mean. But it's sort of like, I feel like a lot of people, I don't know. This is just me making assumptions based on what I see on social media. Whenever I see someone who has a puppy and they're like, I want to start my puppy on raw, they are taking it so freaking seriously. But again, this is, what is it called? Like, we're in this bubble of raw feeders.
Right.
So I'm not talking to people, in, maybe a breed specific group or something that's not focused on diet. They may be delivering a completely different message and I don't know it. And then of course there's the rotational mono feeding, which is just will make your head explode.
So I was at a dog sports event this past weekend because I'm going to have somebody interviewed on the Believe in Dog podcast. So I was going to observe their mock trial. And so these are a mix of sporting dogs and working dogs who are all, really, really good condition, body condition, almost like where us family dog owners would be like, is that dog too thin? Because they're all, they're working dogs. And so I just kind of made like an offhand remark to somebody about I had been at the Healthy Dog Expo and they were kind of like, oh, I hadn't heard of that. What's that? And I said, oh, they talk about like raw feeding. And wow, did I have the wrong audience to mention the term raw feeding. And I was really surprised because I thought that with people so involved with their dogs that this would be more common. And the consensus was kind of like, they've been making been making kibble dog food for years, and they know the science and they know what's behind it. And, and raw is, people don't know what they're doing and, and it's too hard and too complicated. And I was just so shocked because I thought for sure.
Shocking. I've heard that before because, I think there's like a huge golden retriever group and, some of the same thing where I've heard from people or I know I have someone that I'm friends with who she was a member of a lot of Australian Shepherd groups because that's her breed. And she just stopped saying anything because every time she mentioned, even if she didn't start it, if someone asked her about it and it was in the group, people would like flip out. And you would think that we were suggesting like, well, if you feed your dog grapes and then give them 2 pounds of garlic, and then, I mean, you would think that just like, and then some
dark
chocolate for
Right.
dinner. And, if you did, that was the reaction and response. And it got really aggressive in one group. And she ended up having to just leave the group because it was just too much. And it was just like, she's telling me this. And I'm like, really? Because again, in this bubble.
Yeah.
And I mean, even my friends here locally who don't feed raw, they understand raw and they're not against it or anything. It's just a choice that they made not to do, and whatever. But I've never come up. I should say, I wouldn't say never, but I can't remember the last time I've really come across anyone being anti-raw. My biggest thing is basically everyone has a way that they do it, and they forget that that's your way, not the way. And so that's kind of like the thing where I'll get a random comment on a video like, that's not how you feed raw. And it's like, it may not be how you feed raw, but it's definitely how I feed raw, and it's working well. But, and I get it, because it's just, I bet a lot of raw feeding videos get those comments.
I'm sure. So it is almost National Raw Feeding Week.
I know. I'm so happy. I every time this time of year comes, I kick myself in the butt for even coming up with the idea of National Raw Feeding Week, because it's so much work. Something always happens, and I should knock on wood because I'm cursing myself, that throws me behind. So this is, I'm so silly. I made it the first week of April. I'm an accountant, so this is tax season. I'm super busy.
I'm sure.
It's like insane. I'm stressed out. And I have to work late into the night just to get the videos edited and everything. And I got into a car accident. So that threw me behind a few days. And so I still have a lot of videos to edit. Cause I interviewed Dr. Judy Morgan. That video is finished. I interviewed Scott. Scott's video is in 2 parts. There's a serious part, and then there's just us talking. And we went on this tangent about the zombies and stuff. But as Scott and I usually do, Billy Hookman, which I broke my initial plan was to make a bunch of 10-minute videos, but I can't remember who I interviewed. It might have been Josie Bug, and it might have been Dr. Judy Morgan, where their video, there was no clear cut point where I can stop it and then start a new video. So I just was like, I'll just let them be 20 to 30 minutes. But yeah, National Raw Feeding, I can't remember what year I came up with the idea. I just remember I was looking at the pet calendar to come up with like my content for the year, and looking at the pet calendar, I'm filling out my organizer. And I noticed that there wasn't anything specific for raw feeding. And I was like, wow, we should do that. And I looked online I Googled how to create a holiday.
Right. Like you hear on the news, it's National Pancake Day. Right.
And I thought it never, thank God I just got some common sense in my brain. But I found one site that charged like $10,000 or $15,000 to create a holiday.
Oh my God.
And I'm gathering that you're paying all that money to end up on calendars. But I have honestly no idea, because it wasn't like it was some official, I don't know what it was. But I was looking at that like, that's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. So, and I was just like, so basically National Black Cat Day, someone paid $10,000 or $15,000 it's like, that didn't make any sense to me. So I reached out to a website that, I know that maintains an annual pet calendar, and just asked, how do I add a holiday? And they just said, just send us what it is and the dates, and we'll put it in there. And so I did. And then I guess the next step was, okay, when do I want to do it? And I chose April, because April is the month that I transitioned to raw. And every year I used to do a raw feeding from A to Z series on my blog. And so that year I was just going to make it into the National Raw Feeding Week. So at first it was going to be a day, but then I was like, we deserve a week. And then after I did all that, I learned about Rawgust. And I don't know who came up with Rawgust, but the whole month of August is supposed to be about raw feeding. But I just kept up with the National Raw Feeding Week. It was an excuse for me to interview cool people. And ultimately, I've been interviewing the exact same people every year. And so this year, I tried to interview people that, I've never spoken to before, and interview the opposite of the Rodney and the Karen and the people who are just random people who are feeding raw, and that was fun. And I wanted to interview like even people outside of the, like maybe like a dog trainers and because I did that one year. I interviewed Ronnie Lejeune, a perfectly rawsome, but I just didn't have time, and thank God, because I have so many videos still left to edit.
And it seemed like, you expanded your focus to include kind of more health and general stuff this year.
Yeah.
So that was exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, as passionate as I am about raw feeding, I know for sure that raw feeding, one, isn't the answer to everything and isn't a possibility for a lot of people. And I think that sometimes when we focus solely on raw feeding, we end up losing people because in their mind, it's like, oh, well, I can't do that because it's too hard. Or I tried it before and my dog had diarrhea. And so then they just walk away when there's all these other cool things that they can be doing. And we didn't get a chance to give them that message because we started out with, are you feeding raw? Right. So I'm pretty excited. I need to edit Rodney's video. I'm going to probably do that on Friday night because it's very long. He talks a lot. He talks a lot and he has so much information.
Yeah.
And it's just how his brain can hold on to all of this information. It's insane. He is such a nutrition nerd. It's not even funny. So I used our interview time to ask him all the questions from like these graphics that he was putting out when he and Karen were promoting the Forever Dog, because I was like, these graphics are ridiculous. So I asked him about the blueberries. I asked him about the light bulbs. and I knew, I was like, and it was funny because he's such a good sport, but he was saying like, yeah, people have problems with that one. Yep. People have problems with that one. And so it was like really fun, just getting stuff clarified. And so I'm really excited about putting that one out. Unfortunately for everyone who's excited about Rodney's video is always the last video. And I have rules about Rodney's video. And it's not Rodney's rules, it's Facebook rules. The reason why Rodney's video is last is because I cannot put another video on my Facebook page, because all of the promotion for Rodney's video will stop and it'll switch to the newest video. And so Rodney's video gets the most views. So it always has to be the last one. And so I've learned that over the years. Just, I can't add any type of links to YouTube in the description because, again, that'll shut down the views. And I just have to be very careful about what I put in there and when I do it. But I think people are going to really like that. And I think I don't think it'll be I know that it won't be a full video because we were talking for like over 2 hours. So it'll probably be 3 smaller videos, or maybe break it up by the question. We'll see.
So is it one speaker a day?
It would have been in a perfect world, but I interviewed way too many people.
Oh, okay.
So that's why the Patreon group is getting all the videos now. So I just feel like if I can just get it off my plate and I can put it over there, and then I can just turn around and share it over everywhere else. But I think it'll probably be every day will probably be 2 videos. Probably 2 videos every day. And then the last day will be Rodney's video.
And so I'm on your Patreon, so I've been watching all the videos as they come out. But the rest of them will be on your Facebook page and on YouTube.
I'm going to continue sharing them to the Patreon group until April 1st and even after April 1st, because I'll still be editing. But so on April 1st, like the ones that you guys, like, what was it? Billy Hookman, Judy Morgan, like those are the ones that are going to go up first. And so on the 1st and 2nd, and then I'll be editing through the weekend. And again, after I edit, so it's like it can be 10 o'clock at night. I'm uploading it to the Patreon group, and then I'll schedule it for YouTube and Facebook for whatever the day is. But what I wish in a perfect world, I would have all of this done in February. That's always my plan, is to have everything done in February. And it never quite works out. I'm always hitting right at but I give it the old college try. and I just, to me, it's like I learn so much every single time. And it's so hard. It's probably like you going to the Healthy Dog Expo. It's so hard not to, after I get off the Zoom with whomever I'm talking to, not to run out. Like with Judy Morgan, I ran and got her book and I flipped and found the page that she referenced and I was highlighting and making notes in it. With Rodney, I went to the store and I got 3 pounds of organic blueberries, some broccoli sprouts that we talked about last weekend.
Yes, I totally have broccoli sprouts coming. Yes.
Yeah. And it's just sort of like, and it's really hard not to go and do. I will not buy supplements. I've learned that. I don't go out and buy supplements or order supplements, but if it's fresh food or a book, and then I'm all over it. And so, yeah, it was really fun. I also interviewed Nora Lenz, the creator of the rotational mono feeding.
Yes.
That's going to be one of the last videos I do as well, because I made the mistake of interviewing her first and then reading her book second. And I mean, it was a mistake, but it is what it is. In a perfect world, I would have read the book, tried rotational mono feeding for a few weeks, then interviewed her.
Gotcha.
So someone I didn't know what I was getting into when I interviewed her. Someone just said, "Oh, you should interview this person." And I was just like, all right. And when I was interviewing her, I was just blown like, wow, this is great. So that's going to be a really hard interview because it's going to be me coming in and clarifying things and answering questions that I should have asked. Like, for instance, because there's a plant day, what about the carbs? Like, should our dogs be having all these carbs? And I need to get into the group and ask them some questions and get some clarification on some things that I need to add to that video. So that's going to be a little harder. That'll be this weekend. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Do you like the video so far?
Oh my gosh, yes. So I loved your conversation with Dr. Josie. She's really awesome. I think that's like, she's been on my radar, but that was the first time I'd ever heard her have a conversation with her. And I was just like, I really loved that. And Dr. Judy, she's just always amazing. And again, I'm somewhat familiar with the food energetics thing, but I got all excited about it again, listening to you guys talk about it.
Doesn't it though? Yes. Doesn't it make you excited about it? Because
I have a book. I'm like, I need to get that book out again.
Yes. It's and I hope she does another one. Cause it's I mean, and even after that, I'm messaging her and I'm like, emu, octopus, and just asking her, throwing her proteins to see, because it's there are so many amazing, I mean, I know that people are really interested in the warming and cooling foods, but I feel like the average person isn't applying it correctly. I know that I wasn't, because it's not just the protein. There's so much more to it. And when she talks about how, I can go deeper. So is it, what is it, like a farm raised chicken or a factory farm chicken? Are you feeding dark meat or white meat? And she just goes into all of these things. And, I loved that I was able to remember just random things like bone broth does that. And, and the fact that, if you're doing lamb bone broth, it's already going to be hot. Then you made bone broth, so it's heated. So it's going to be even hotter. And it's well, damn it. and the fact that you can't avoid carbs. It's not necessary to take away all carbs, instead of looking at certain foods as a carb alone, but think about all the amazing other things that food brings to the bowl, health wise. And she's just so matter of fact and just so much fun. I've known her for so long, and she's been so beneficial to Keep the Tail Wagging, and the reason why I still have it. She and Dr. Kathy Alanovi and Dr. Karen Becker, but mostly Alanovi and Morgan, because they were just so amazing. I mean, just taking the time. Dr. Kathy Alanovi would sit on the phone with me for an hour, going over questions about just the most random things and explaining things to me and stuff. And both of them just had the attitude of, we just want you to get it right, rather than just guessing or having part of the story. And when I met them the first time in Seattle, in Bellevue, Washington, I was so fangirling. It was just I was with them and Billy was there. I had already met Billy once, and Susan Thixton was there. It was just oh my God, so much fun and so amazing.
I was trying so hard not to fangirl at the Healthy Dog Expo.
It is. It's these people, and they're so passionate about what they do, and they're so smart about what they do. And they're so Susan Thixton is such a badass.
I know.
And she seems like this like really nice lady that lives down the street that you borrow sugar from. And, and would bring you a casserole because you're sick. But she's like a badass. And she has some war stories that I actually interviewed her for a prior National Raw Feeding Week. So I'm thinking of dragging those videos out and sharing those again, because she is so much fun. And I mean, you wouldn't think about it, but like the pet industry, people have followed her. They have tapped her phone.
Yes.
I mean, and this is like some, Thursday night NBC show.
Right. Right.
And she just wants them to change it from, food to feed.
Yeah.
It's like,
at the Healthy Dog Expo, she did share that her daughter got death threats.
Mm-hmm.
And, she talked about some stuff that's going down with this former pet food plant in Missouri that she's been tracking. And it literally sounds like the Erin Brockovich movie.
Yeah.
And she's like, I can tell you that there's something going on, and one day I'll be able to share it all.
Yeah. I mean, and it's been because she takes such heat from people, because whenever she breaks a story, people get so angry. And I remember when she broke the story about the rawhide shoes or no hide shoes. And people were so angry. And I was reading these comments and I'm like, golly. And then it turned out to be correct. And another person who was at the Bellevue thing was the family of the dog that died because that was another one that she got threats over too. The brand that their food had the the
phenobarbital or whatever.
Yeah, phenobarbital.
Pentobarbital or whatever.
Yeah. I met them as well. And because they spoke at the AFCO meeting, but yeah, I remember hearing from people who were like, I was in a group where they wouldn't allow you to share any of her articles and you weren't allowed to bring it up because they were like, she's wrong. And even after it got proven, like she had all of the receipts and she showed everything, people grudgingly let us start talking about it. But it was like really like people doubt her first. And then they grudgingly accept it or they'll do things like, okay, but I'm still giving my dog blank.
Right.
Like, all right. But at least you're doing it with the information.
Right.
I mean, but yeah, I honestly would not have, it's hard enough being a blogger, and by hard enough, it's not hard at all. It's mildly annoying at times. I could not handle, I like people to like me. And I like to smile and have fun. I can't handle people just like, just scary, mean comments. But she handles it, and it's like she just lets it go and just goes on. And I love the fact that she keeps her focus on the pets rather than on social media.
And like when you know her story, it's like you get that passion for why she keeps doing what she's doing. Mm-hmm. Like I totally get it. Like I'm sure that's always the fire burning in her.
Exactly. Because she lost a dog because of
the melamine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she shared that in our interview as well. And she's just amazing. There's just so many amazing people. I feel like a lot of these, especially when you think about, I don't know what percentage of veterinarians are men versus women, but I'm really excited about the fact that there are so many female veterinarians that are leading the charge to holistic and integrative and raw feeding and fresh food and such. And it's like pretty darn amazing. And, people know. It's always funny to me when someone who doesn't know who Karen Becker is, but what's even better is I will occasionally get the random email from someone who's like, I see that you like raw feeding. You should really check out Rodney Habib and Karen Becker. And I'm just like, oh, well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So first 7 days of April. Every year, after it's over, I say this is the last year. It never is. But this year, I should say also, I'm doing daily giveaways.
Oh,
and so I'm working with Real Dog Box, and they are going to be offering nutrition consultations to one winner a day for 7 days. So I'm really excited about that. I have to sit down and do the graphics for that. And then several people are offering specials. So Scott Marshall is offering a discount on his Raw Feeding 101 course. There are a couple of online businesses that are offering discounts as well. And over the years, I've seen pet stores host like a sale that week. And so that's really kind of cool because it's like, yay. So hopefully we'll see a little bit of that around the country. I was sort of hoping it would turn into this huge thing where everyone was like, oh, it's National Raw Feeding Week. Let me put all the raw stuff off, 25% off this week. But,
we'll get there. You'll get
baby
there.
steps.
You'll get there.
I hope so.
Well, I'm very excited. I've been watching all the videos as they come out on Patreon, and I will definitely be watching all of the rest of the videos as they come out.
I'm glad. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. It makes me happy to do it, and because it's so much fun. And I'm lucky. I'm very lucky to have joined this community when I did, and I, to know the people that I know, and it's funny. Years ago, someone questioned whether I actually knew these people. They thought I was just lying about it. And I thought it was funny. And I was going to say, I can send you text messages, but then I was just like, no, let them, that's okay. You guys don't have to believe me. I'm okay with that. It's silly. But it was just, I'm very, very lucky because I can reach out to Judy Morgan and, Billy Hookman and Rodney Habib and say, hey, I need you to do this. Scott was like, I texted him one night and was like, hey, I need to interview you. And he was on my calendar the next morning. And it was just like, yes. And he was one of the first, we were both sick. Both had just gotten over COVID when we did our interview. Oh, so I had to edit out these coughing fits and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like the collective brain trust. It's really exciting.
It is. It's so much fun. And they're just, everyone, I think every time I finish a video, I'm always like, this is my favorite one. And so, and it's just like, I love them all because I've learned so much. I got such a kick out of talking to Scott. He's been such a good friend of mine for so long. And he's just so much fun to talk to. But I probably this year so far, it's Judy Morgan. Yeah. It's the food energetics. It was just just appealed to the nerd in me. I loved it.
Do you go to acupuncture?
I don't. I used to take Sydney to acupuncture, but my acupuncturist moved to Arizona, so that stopped my acupuncture.
Because when she was talking about the blood movers and the yin and the yang foods and dampness and that stuff that I talk about with my personal acupuncturist, as well as our dogs. And I always laugh because my vet has some of the same posters on her wall as my acupuncturist does. Yeah. And my acupuncturist thought that was sort of funny. And he didn't really know that it was used that. So many people, or I don't know that I was using it, but I do all of the things because I got to keep Humpty Dumpty together here after all my health issues, But I get all excited when I hear people talking about this in the world.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of cool. And I mean, actually, after I got off the phone with her, I've been calling to try and make an appointment with the acupuncturist for 2 years and just have not been able to find one locally.
Oh, wow.
And so it's been, ever since I lost my person, it's really hard to find an acupuncturist and it's hard to get a vet appointment, period. But so I'm still looking, but yeah, it's just, that was what I thought of too, because it was just like, oh my gosh, this is so great. She's so amazing. She's so smart. And she talks about it so matter of fact.
Yeah.
All of this information is just sitting in her brain and she just talks about it. And I mean, I'm the same way when it comes to blogging or, some accounting stuff. I mean, it's just what I do, but it's just it always just blows me away. Another person that just surprises me is Billy, because it's not like this is what he went to school for. He's not a certified nutritionist or anything like that. But he loves this stuff so much and just gets such a kick out of it that, talking to him about things is just hilarious. Did you see, I don't know if you saw it, I posted it because I messaged him before we talked about this last week where I asked him, what are you going to speak about? And he said, how not to give bread to my dog. Yeah. And it's just he's just so much fun. And I'm glad that he's working with Green Juju because now I get to see him more often. although I complain every time because I hate driving down into Seattle. So I'm always like, ugh, Seattle sucks so bad. But the food is really good. So I go.
One day I'll make it to Seattle.
Yeah. It's a interesting city nowadays. It's not what it used to be, but hopefully it'll come back soon. But I'm in Marysville. Marysville is great.
I feel that way about Baltimore.
Yeah.
Baltimore too, yeah.
I almost moved to Baltimore years ago.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I just wanted to change. And so I flew out there. I did a job. I even got a job. I did everything.
wow.
And then by the time I got home, I freaked out and was just like, no, I can't leave. And so I ended up staying here, which is fine.
We do have an awesome dog community in Baltimore. For all of its problems, we have an awesome dog community.
I love the homes.
Like the row homes?
Mm-hmm. It's just so cool. And just, I saw some where I knew someone that lived there, and he would take me to these homes because he was in the real estate industry. And, where they remodeled it all inside. Mm-hmm. And it was just they're so narrow, but they were so smart about the space. And I was just like in the I don't know if it's cobblestone roads or brick roads, but
there's both. Yeah. In different sections. Yeah.
And that's just, here we don't have stuff like that here. So.
And I think I know the part of town you were in, and there's a lot of like the rooftop decks on the houses too.
Yeah. They're so cool. So I like that. But yeah, I'm here. I'm a Pacific Northwesterner. I'm okay with that. Well, thanks for chatting with me today.
Yes. And we'll have links for everybody in the show notes of the things we were talking about.
Absolutely.
And next week will be National Raw Feeding Week.
I know. I promise I'll be done.
You have a lot of work to do.
I know. I have to go now because I have recording to do.
All right. Until next week.
Bye, guys.